Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Continuing from yesterday evening, where we discussed Balaram killing Dhenukasura, one of the two demons in Vrindavan that Balaram killed. There were additional demons outside of Vrindavan, which we heard Sunday evening. Balvala, Dvidvida, etc. But in Vrindavan, Pralambasura was killed by Balaram. And the age of Krishna is about 6. The Govardhan Leela hasn't occurred yet. That's when he's 7. So he's still 6. His Poganda age has begun. And the chapter opens in the very similar way as yesterday evening. Very playful mood in the forests of Vrindavan, the young boys. Vrindavan is a very beautiful place. It is filled with birds, animals, and flowers. Throughout the forest, there are many waterfalls, sounding very pleasant, and crystal clear lakes dotted with colorful blooming lotus flowers. The spray from the waterfalls makes the air fresh, clean, and cool. The streams and lakes make the grass grow lusciously green. The cows are very happy because there is so much fresh grass for them to eat. Notice that little cow in the lower left corner. The air is filled with the sweet scent of the flowers and the songs of the birds. The peacocks are crowing and dancing happily among the flowers. The deer wander peacefully throughout the forest scenery. The croaking of the frogs added to the sounds of the forest, making it even more pleasant. Krishna and his older brother Balaram wandered in this beautiful forest along with their cowherd boyfriends and their cows. They decorate themselves with leaves, peacock feathers, and garlands of flowers. The boys sing, dance, and wrestle with each other. Krishna dances and plays his flute. Some of the boys sing, while others clap or bugle on buffalo horns. They praise Krishna, saying, "Krishna, you dance so nicely." There's the wrestling in the lower left, and the clapping, and the dancing, and the bugle horns. Walking arm in arm, bowing to each other, and having great fun, they march deeper into the delightful forest. As the day goes on, they continue to play. Sometimes they play blind man's bluff, running in all directions and trying to tag each other. Sometimes they play hide and seek. They climb up trees, run over the hills, and hide behind the rocks. Sometimes the boys pretend to be a king with his servants. Krishna and Balaram enjoy playing these games with their friends each day in the wonderful forest of Vrindavan. They love to imitate the forest deer and the many kinds of birds. There's a cowherd boy about to take flight like a bird, another with antlers like a deer. Yeah, you get the idea. They're playing like little children will play. They would sometimes jump around like frogs, sometimes play various jokes, sometimes ride in swings, and sometimes imitate monarchs. They also have fun swinging from vines underneath the gorgeous canopy of tree branches. While the other boys were dancing, O king, Krishna and Balaram would sometimes accompany them with song and instrumental music, and sometimes the two lords would praise the boys, saying, "Very good, very good." In this way, Krishna and Balaram played all sorts of well-known games as they wandered among the rivers, hills, valleys, bushes, trees, and lakes of Vrindavan. This is all preparation for another game when Pralambasura arrives. The cowherd boy pastimes are celebrated this is chapter 16, I think, and in chapter 16, and in chapter 12, that's before the Brahma Vimohan Leela takes place. There, a celebrated verse, Shukadev Goswami is describing like this to Maharaj Parikshit, and he just stops, and in an ecstatic mood, he starts pondering and glorifying how fortunate are these cowherd boys. And there's two verses where it makes comparisons. The yogis, they meditate on the same Supreme Lord as Paramatma. The pure devotees, they meditate upon the Supreme Lord as their worshipable deity. The impersonalists consider him to be the impersonal Brahman effulgence. The materialists just see him as an ordinary person, and these cowherd boys are playing with him all day long. Krita Punya Punja. How have they become so fortunate? The same absolute truth that are adored by others, they're just playing with him. So it's easy to be charmed by their activities, but at the same time, as Shukadev Goswami is being mindful, he's the Supreme Lord. It's their position is very fortunate. As you see, there's a cowherd boy riding on Krishna's back, like Krishna's a horse, and he's telling him, "Get up, move faster." Krishna interacts with the forest animals. This pastime takes place during the summer. The Pralambasura, the Dainikasura took place in spring, and this is in summer. Krishna would sometimes sit beneath a tree, play upon his flute, and the cowherd boys would simply be charmed, stopping all their activities and being mesmerized by Krishna's flute. Sometimes the cowherd boys would play with bilva or kumbha fruits, and sometimes with handfuls of amalaki fruit. At other times they would play games like trying to touch one another, or of trying to identify somebody while one is blindfolded. That's the blind man's bluff. And sometimes they would imitate animals and birds. In the painting, there's boys crouched like frogs, ready to jump. Others like birds. They're in the back as the blind man's bluff. And I was told one time that this scene in the front is a common game in India amongst boys. Is that true? There are two boys with their arms outstretched and the third boy is in between. Never seen that.
We have a game like that. For girls. There are two girls who do like something like that, and one girl has to go around and around like an 8.
Uh-huh.
And they just catch them when they come to 10.
So whoever drew this knew the game. It's not mentioned in the Bhagavatam. If this light could go out, that would probably make it easier to see the screen. Yeah, okay. One day, as they played, a great demon named Pralambasura sneaked into the forest, disguised as a friend. He hid behind a tree, watching the boys, thinking of a plan to kidnap Krishna and Balaram. So you see his thoughts as he's hiding behind a tree, and Krishna is very clear. This is not one of the cowherd. It's said in commentary that that particular day, one of the cowherd boys stayed home, and this Pralambasura manifested a form like that cowherd boy. Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, knew what Pralambasura was thinking, so he began to make a plan to kill him. Since the Supreme Lord Krishna, who had appeared in the Dasharha dynasty, sees everything, he understood who the demon was. Still, the Lord pretended to accept the demon as a friend. Apparently that's the boy in the background, that's the pretending to be one of the cowherd boys, while at the same time seriously considering how to kill him. Krishna then called all his friends together for a new game. Let's divide up into 2 even teams and fight against each other in pairs, he said. The cowherd boys divided into 2 groups, and the 2 lords became the leaders of the 2 groups. They played the childhood game known as Hari Na Kridanam. Hari Na Kridanam, in which each boy paired off with an opponent, and all the boys would simultaneously attack their respected rivals. So in the painting on the right, it's already showing that Krishna has to carry Sridham because he lost. While Balaram challenged one of the cowherd boys to fight, Krishna welcomed Pralambasura. He pretended the demon was a friend by including him in the game. While they played, some of the boys took care of the cows. That's on the left. Half of the boys, along with Pralambasura, took the side of Krishna. The others took the side of Balaram. Then the fights began. And if you look in the sky, the demigods are checking out the situation here, because they know that Pralambasura is a demon also. So you see, there's Balaram defeating Pralambasura, because Pralambasura is with his back on the ground, and Krishna and Sridham are still fighting, etc. The boys who lost the fight had to carry the winners on their shoulders. Krishna, by his sweet will, lost his fight with Sridham. There's Sridham. His bodily complexion is also darkish like Krishna. Pralambasura lost his fight to Balaram, and Bhadrasena lost to Brishabh. So again, it's just another line drawing showing the boys playing and the losers had to carry the winners. The boys played various games involving carriers and passengers. That's maybe what that Sanskrit means. Carriers and passengers. In these games, the winner would climb up on the backs of the losers who would have to carry them. So you can see very clearly from the painting. This is Pralambasura with Balaram on his shoulders. Here's Krishna carrying Sridham, and the others are also mentioned. Bhadrasen carried Brishab, and we don't know who this other pair is. Defeated, the Supreme Lord Krishna carried Sridham. Bhadrasen carried Brishab. And Pralamba carried Balaram. And there's a color picture of the same on the right side. Yeah, same. Showing who carried whom. Pralambasura wanted to kidnap Balaram without any trouble from Krishna. With Balaram on his shoulders, he ran far away from where everyone else was playing. Balaram, being all-powerful, began to make himself heavier and heavier. Pralambasura began to get weaker and could not keep his real form hidden. Balaram wondered how strange that this cowherd boy is changing. Now Krishna knew, and Balaram, by Yogamaya's influence, his omniscience was covered, and he's starting to recognize what's going on. The demon now appeared in his original horrible form. He was as high as the sky, and he had fiery eyes and sharp teeth. Suddenly Balaram realized that this was not a friend, but a demon who wanted to kill him. It's part of the Leela that he didn't recognize immediately, although Krishna immediately did. And many different images of his being bashed by the fist of Balaram. Balaram, who carried the plow weapon, saw the gigantic body of the demon as he moved swiftly in the sky with blazing eyes, fiery hair, terrible teeth reaching toward his scowling brow, and an amazing effulgence generated by his armlets, crown, and earrings. The Lord seemed to be a little frightened. In commentary, as you see at the bottom, Krishna had invoked his Yogamaya potency, both so that Balaram wouldn't recognize and so that Balaram would feel this emotion of fear, because he's all-powerful and he's omniscient. But it's a transcendental emotion induced by Krishna's Yogamaya. According to Vishnu Purana, this is Sanatan Goswami's commentary, Krishna called out to Balaram, "What is this mentality of a mere man which you are exhibiting, O soul of all, even though your true nature is more confidential than all other secret things?" Vishnu Purana. Then Balaram remembered and realized everything about what was happening. So Yogamaya is under Krishna's control. And sometimes Krishna expands Yogamaya so that Balaram becomes frightened or bewildered or something. And then Krishna withdraws Yogamaya. And then Balaram can understand everything. Same thing happened with the One whole year passed with the Krishna was manifest as the calves and cowherd boys, and Balaram didn't recognize it. Towards the end of the year, Yogamaya curtain started to pull back, and he was then pondering, wow, what's going on here? And then he slowly started to understand and shared that understanding with Krishna and was appreciating the kindness that Krishna was extending to the mothers and to the cows. Remembering the actual situation, the fearless Balaram understood that the demon was trying to kidnap him and take him away from his companions. The Lord then became furious and struck the demon's head with his hard fist, just as Indra, the king of the demigods, strikes a mountain with his thunderbolt weapon. And there's many images of Balaram raising his right arm and smashing the demon in the head. In the upper left picture, there's Krishna calling out with cowherd boys standing behind. Down below, it's no cowherd boys behind him. Pralambasura assumed his demon body. There's a big picture, Balaram smashing him. Krishna calling on the right side there. With his powerful fist, Balaram hit the head of the demon just as a thunderbolt strikes the top of a mountain. Smash. Celebrated pastime, so there's lots of paintings. Thus, smashed by Balaram's fist, Pralambasura's head immediately cracked open. The demon vomited blood from his mouth and lost all consciousness, and then with a great noise he fell lifeless on the ground, like a mountain devastated by Indra. The cowherd boys were most astonished. There you can see them below. To see how the powerful Balaram had killed the demon Pralamba, and they exclaimed, "Excellent, excellent." After being struck by the fist of Balaram, Pralambasura fell lifeless to the ground, making a loud crash. Blood poured from his mouth. Hearing the loud noise, all the boys ran quickly to see what had happened. Arriving on the scene, the boys were amazed at the ghastly sight, while Krishna began praising his brother Balaram. The demon was really big. We'll hear some other narrations shortly. Everyone began to congratulate Balaram. You see up above it, the demigods showering flowers. Overwhelmed with affection for him, they began to hug him with great fondness, as the demigods in the heavens joyfully showered flowers on Balaram. So different moods, the affectionate cowherd boys and the worshipful demigods. Then Krishna and Balaram, along with their cowherd friends and cows, made their way back to their homes after a long and exciting day in Vrindavan. And then comes the whole scene of the residents of Vrindavan welcoming the cowherd boys, singing their songs of what Krishna did that day, Krishna playing upon his flute, and just very sweet pastimes, very melodious pastimes, dancing, singing, like cowherd boys. So this is one painting that shows many parts of the same pastime. Down in the right side, they're doing the wrestling. Just above that, the winners are being carried by the losers. Above that is they're pairing off who's going to wrestle home. In the upper left, that's because this is a standard technique in old paintings. The whole story is told in one painting. Balaram being carried off in the air, raising his fist, smashing Pralambasura. Down at the bottom, he falls. The sinful Pralamba, having been killed, the demigods felt extremely happy, and they showered flower garlands upon Lord Balaram and praised the excellence of his deed. So I neglected to bring with me, so I'm just going to read it from PDF in my computer. Garga Samhita narrates this pastime. I explained yesterday evening about Garga Samhita. Are you familiar with what it is? Garga Samhita? You know who is the person who did the sage, the Brahmana who did the name-giving ceremony for Krishna Balaram? Garga Muni. Garga Muni lived in Mathura. He was the priest for the Yadu ruling kings, and he was invited by Krishna's father Vasudeva to go to Vrindavan and do the name-giving ceremony for Krishna and Balaram. The name is Garga Muni. Garga Muni. So Garga Muni, a book is written called Garga Samhita, as you see, by Sri Garga Muni. So Garga Muni narrates to someone the whole of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, as was told by Narada to the king of another country, Mithila. Mithila is the same place where Lord Ramachandra was, where Sita was born, and Ramchandra went there and got the hand of Sita. Same kingdom, east side, north and east, from where Krishna lived. So the king, the king of Mithila, he is asking Narada about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. And that's the book. So in Garga Samhita, here's the description. Now there's a little, first of all, in the early sections of Garga Samhita, there's a description of different groups of gopis, along with the Nitya Siddha, or eternally perfected gopis, that descend with Krishna and join Krishna's pastimes. In Garga Samhita, there's 6 different groups that take birth in Vrindavan, and they're like apprentices. They're being trained by the Nitya Siddha gopis. And one of them is the Aborigine girls are called Pulindas. You'll hear the word Pulinda. Means girls or young ladies that live in the forest, kind of like Aborigine type of people. And they became gopis, according to Garga Samhita, when Lord Ramachandra was in Panchavati. Panchavati is a place where for some time Ram spent with Sita and Lakshman in the forest, in the Dandak forest. There's a place, Panchavati. So some young forest girls, Pulinda girls, saw him, and they were overwhelmed with affection for him, and they fell at his feet, trying to take dust from his feet, saying, we understand you've taken a vow that you only marry one wife, we're unqualified anyways, and we're ready to give up our lives because we won't be able to be married to you. We're feeling that affection for you so intensely. So, according to Garga Samhita, Lord Ramachandra manifested a brahmachari form and said, no worries. In my next incarnation, you'll appear with me and you'll be my wives, his young gopi girls. And then he transformed himself back into Lord Ramachandra. It's in Garga Samhita. So we're going to hear about the Pulinda gopis in just a moment. Here we go. Canto 4, Chapter 10, Sri Narada said, Now I will tell you the story of the Pulinda women that became gopis, a wonderful and sacred story that removes all sins and increases one's love for Lord Krishna. Living in the forests of the Vindhya hills, many Pulinda highwaymen stole the king of Vindhya Desh. They stole the king's wealth, although they never stole from the poor. Very angry, the powerful king of Vindhya Desh took 2 Akshauhini divisions of soldiers and confronted all the Pulinda men. For how many days did they fight with swords, spears, battle axes, rishtis, and bushundis? To the Yadu king Kamsa, the Pulindas sent a letter begging for aid. So there's the Aborigine people, and there's the king of Vindhya Desh having a big battle. And so the Pulinda leaders sent a message to Kamsa. To the Yadu king Kamsa, the Pulindas sent a letter begging for aid. Kamsa sent a powerful demon named Pralamba. He was 16 miles tall, dark as a cloud, decorated with a helmet and earrings, and garlanded with a serpent. With chains around his ankles, a club in his hand, a tongue moving to and fro, and a horrible, ugly form, he looked like death personified. When he walked, he flattened the hills and made trees fall. Staring at Pralamba, who was drunk with the idea of a fight, and who made the earth shake, the king and his army fled the battlefield as an elephant flees when it sees a lion. Then Pralamba took the Pulindas to Mathura, the highwaymen, the robbers. Oh, King of Kings, this is Narada to King Bahalash, we can't see. The Pulindas and their families all became Kamsa's servants. They lived at Kamagiri. By Lord Ramachandra's blessing, many Pulinda women took birth as their splendidly beautiful daughters. They were glorious and worshipable as the goddess of fortune herself. Simply by seeing Lord Krishna, they were overcome with passionate love for him. They embraced the dust that had touched his feet. They thought of him day and night. During the Rasa dance, they attained the association of Lord Krishna, the perfect Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ruler of Goloka. The great good fortune of these Pulinda girls is that they attained the dust of Sri Krishna's lotus feet, dust that even the great demigods cannot attain. A person who does not desire the post of Brahma, the post of Indra, a great royal kingdom, the kingdom of Patalaloka, mystic powers, or even freedom from the worlds of birth and death, but desires only the dust of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's feet, is a true devotee of the Lord. Aloof from material possessions and free from past karma, the sages and saintly devotees who love the dust of Lord Krishna's feet say there is no real happiness in any other place. So that's a story about Pralamba bringing the Pulinda girls to Mathura, and then eventually they became participants in Rasa dance. So here's the story of the killing of Pralamba. So we heard how tall he is and what he looked like. Narada said, one day, as he was herding his cows in Bandiravan forest by the Jamuna shore. Now, this Bandiravan forest is a very celebrated place. It's a forest given its name by one very, very special tree that's, I forget the dimensions. So many, so tall and so wide. It's like a huge banyan tree. And thus the forest became named after it. By the Jamuna shore, Krishna played many childhood games with Balaram and the Gopa boys. Keeping an eye on the beautiful cows, Krishna played a game of carried and carriers with the boys. Sent by Kamsa, and now assuming the form of a Gopa, the demon Pralamba came there. Although the Gopas did not know who he really was, Krishna did. When Balaram won in the game, there was no one to carry him. Pralamba offered to carry him. Pralamba carried him out of Bandira forest, far away to the Jamuna shore. Suddenly, assuming a monstrous form, like a giant cloud, or an impassable king of mountains, the demon went in the direction of Mathura. Now, just the geography. Bandiravan is by the Jamuna shore, but they walk towards the Jamuna shore. And Mathura is kind of northwest from where they were. Riding on the demon's back, handsome Balaram was splendid as a moving earring, a full moon in the sky, a glittering lightning flash. As King Indra hits a mountain with his thunderbolts, so powerful Balaram, noticing that his carrier had become a monster, punched Balaram's head with his fist. Falling on the ground as a mountain hit by Indra's thunderbolt falls, the demon, his head broken, made the earth tremble. A great effulgence left the demon and merged into Lord Balaram. Sometimes the question is asked, when this demon, we heard yesterday about the Dhenukasura, really far out, Vaikuntha Vimana came and took him away. Here, it's a little different in Gopal Champu. We'll see that in a moment. But he's merged with the body of Balaram. Then the demigod showering flowers from Nandana gardens. O King of Kings, the sound of victory, victory filled the heaven and earth. O King, now that I've recounted for you this wonderful pastime of Lord Balaram, what more do you wish to hear? King Bahalashva said, O sage, who was the ferocious demon Pralamba in his previous birth, that he was able to attain liberation by Lord Balaram's hand? And I'll narrate that at the end. So now I'm going to go, this is the narration that we hear from Garga Samhita. The same pastime is narrated slightly differently in Gopal Champu. As you see at the bottom, it's a writing of Jiva Goswami. The writing of Jiva Goswami is, when Krishna returned to Vrindavan, he promised he would return to Vrindavan. He returned to Vrindavan after he killed Dhenukasura, after he killed Dantavakra. Dantavakra, the giant Vijay, the two gatekeepers of Lord Narayan and Vaikuntha, had descended in 3 births as demons. You familiar with that? Giant Vijay, the gatekeepers in Vaikuntha. You know who the 4 Kumaras are? Yes? 4 Kumaras? Little boys? Okay. The 4 Kumaras are sons of Brahma, the firstborn beings coming from the body of Brahma. They decided by their mystic power that they would just maintain little boys sizes. And Brahma said, can you help me fill up the universe with good population? They said, we just want to remain brahmachari. And they had power, they could travel anywhere. And they had knowledge, invested with knowledge of the personality of Godhead. So they came to the gates of Vaikuntha they wanted to enter, and the gatekeeper said, you're 4 little naked boys. You don't have the qualification to enter Vaikuntha. And the 4 Kumaras were offended. They were, we're Brahmins, we're sons of Lord Brahma. We're certainly qualified. And you're not qualified. You shouldn't be here as gatekeepers in Vaikuntha. You should descend to the material world. We'll give you a choice. 3 births as demons, 7 births as devotees. So we want to come back quickly. So 3 births as demons. So those 3 births as demons became very powerful demons. The demons that were confronting Ramachandra, Ravana. You've heard his name? Ravana. And the counterpart is his powerful brother Kumbhakarna. Ravana and Kumbhakarna. Next birth. Hiranyakashipu. Actually, the first birth, excuse me. First birth was Hiranyakashipu, right? Lord Nrsingadev and Hiranyakashipu. And Hiranyaksha was his brother. Then Ravana and Kumbhakarna. And then Dantavakra and Shishupal. Shishupal lost his head. Sudarshan chopped him. So after Krishna killed Dantavakra, he then his promise was fulfilled. He went back to Vrindavan. He spent 2 months while in Vrindavan with the associates, his eternal associates, and the new ones that had joined from other places. And while there, according to Gopal Champu, he stayed at the home of Nanda Maharaj, and every day there was a recitation of Krishna's pastimes by 2 disciples of Narada Muni. And every morning they got together and they would tell stories. And the chronological sequence of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. That's what Gopal Champu is. Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, narrated to Krishna and Nanda, and just like a recount of everything. And very, very sweet. So now I'm going to, because I forgot these printed pages, I'll just read it for you. Here's what Gopal Champu says. In the morning, lit by the effulgence of the assembly, powerful Nanda took his seat with Krishna present. Madhukanta, he's one of the 2 disciples of Narada, Madhukanta began to speak. His brother, sitting near him, please hear a brave exploit of Balaram. As Krishna and Balaram played while herding the cows, summer, which is not much favored by the animals, arrived in Vrindavan. It is not surprising that this summer season had all the qualities of spring, because the 2 brothers attached to Vrindavan always dwelled there. The roar of waterfalls was mistaken for approaching rainstorm clouds. The crickets chirped shrilly, and the trees, covered with mist from the waterfalls, were filled with flowers. Thus summer appeared just like spring. The breeze carried the fragrance of lotuses mixed with cool water to the shady places in the forest, as if it were spring, making the place moist and full of flowers. When suitable things are combined, unlimited happiness of friendship arises. Though it was summer, the humans thought that it was spring in Vrindavan. What to speak of the cuckoos and bees? When Madhava entered the forest and played his flute, the other Madhava, which is summer appearing as spring, was present twofold. The boys were decorated with jewels from their houses and were always decorated with summer flowers and buds, which produced extreme beauty. What more can be said of the summer? Sridham, Sudam, Vasudam, and others gathered in a group not too far away in order to keep a watch on them. Subal, Arjun, Krishna, and Balaram came, danced about, and then joined them. They began to speak while giving blessings. Where do you live? You seem to be dancers. Where are you going? Sridham and others revealed their intentions with joyful minds. Oh, magnanimous souls, we come from far off. Our minds are dancing because of hearing your glories. We also desire to dance with our bodies in front of you. We cannot stay a long time anywhere. Our eyes and ears are now fully satisfied. This is very sweet, kind of poetic exchange. Krishna replied to his friends, "Our two ears are like great gurus with great knowledge. By the ears we understand the qualities of great persons. How much should we respect the mind by praise, since we are joyful here? What use are the feet, since the feet should be used to fulfill our desires? We can focus our eyes on any other attractive object, since here the eyes make us see what is taught by Guru. What have we not achieved with our nostrils, since they bestow upon us bliss? What to say about our skin, which receives the fragrant breeze from the forest? Do you not experience some auspicious emotions from this, by whose results you are inundated internally and externally? There is no harm if the glorious Creator stays here, even by his name." There's more of this kind of conversation. It's back and forth. They're honoring one another in poetic words, in short. They're describing Krishna's, how he's dressed, how he appears, his peacock feather. He should resemble a black cloud, but be more attractive than a black cloud. He should have a flute in his mouth, but be superior to anyone else with a flute. He should have a wonderful form and qualities, but not material ones. He should be full of knowledge, but not a vidyadhara. By such varieties the eyes will be amused. They're just praising one another in an interesting way. The movements of the limbs, the wrestling. The brothers entered into the crowd, which upon hearing their words was laughing and had come close. The praiseworthy brothers, giving joy, began to wrestle. Whirling around, jumping, punching, slapping their arms together, and pulling each other, they struck each other on their chests while wrestling. Krishna, who destroyed the pride of all people with his good qualities, along with his friends, was gratified by blissful knowledge. Sridham and others then showed the art of dancing as an offering to all cultured people. Because the dancing produced great bliss, Krishna with enthusiasm accompanied them, and with difficult rhythms to test their skills. When the cows disappeared, they played. They hit each other with bilva, kumbha, and small amalaki fruits. Laughing, they imitated the animals, the sound of birds, and the hopping of frogs. Krishna spent long time in waves of bliss, in ruling from a king's throne, and by taking off the blindfold of a person so he could touch the person who blindfolded him. Krishna played the king. Stoka Krishna played the minister, while Balaram played another king, and Subal played his minister. Sridham and Bhadra were the commanders of the army. In this way, the two brothers ruled their kingdoms. Sometimes they would stay in one place, sometimes march to war, sometimes make peace, sometimes fight, sometimes be victorious, and sometimes be defeated. In this situation, after some days, one morning, Kamsa began to think deeply about the deaths of his demon associates and became perplexed. Pralamba approached Kamsa, offered respects, and asked, "O king, why are you lamenting?" Kamsa said, "Do you not know? Those who assisted me are all dead. Who remains?" Pralamba said, "Anyway, just engage me for an hour." Kamsa remained silent for a moment, shaking his head. Pralamba said, "Oh Lord, what is this?" Kamsa laughed with distaste, thinking Pralamba as a moth, said, "You may tread the path of the blazing flame." Pralamba said in anger, "Oh, the cruel flame of time burns up the Himalayas and dries up the lake on it." Kamsa said, "Let that be. Do as you wish." Hearing this, offering respect to Kamsa, insulted by Kamsa, without delay, Pralamba, bound by fate, wandered some distance to the spot where Krishna was playing. Their pride will be crushed by being killed by irrevocable time. Today, I will fool them by producing great faith in them. I will fervently play with them, as they do on all days, acting like a friend. I will bind the two boys up by the hands and throwing them on my shoulders, deliver them to Kamsa. That's why Pralamba was heading for Mathura from Garga Samhita. Clothed as a thief, covered in profuse evil, filled with faults, Pralamba came to the cow village and, looking around, put on a cowherd dress, lying in a house. Laughing to please them and mix with them, he then entered the group, but Krishna saw him. Seeing him, Krishna went along with his disguise. "Oh, Bhadra, why are you late? It is good that you are coming at the height of fun." Laughing in this way, at the calamity of disguising oneself as a cowherd, he gained Pralamba's confidence and made friends with him to defeat Balaram's strength. He then said, "O friend, starting today, you are my best friend. I will always keep you in my sight. Let Sridham be on the same side as Balaram, who has a great competitive spirit. He is a suitable partner for you." Giving up dismay, the demon became more arrogant. Since he who desires to create the universe desires to learn the truth from Krishna, what person who thinks himself clever can outwit Krishna? Then Krishna divided the boys into two groups and made Pralamba the head of his group in order to increase his strength. With great enthusiasm, Balaram fought with Pralamba and Sridham fought with Krishna. In this way, they fought, taking the help of other unlimited friends. Those who were defeated had to carry the winners on their shoulders like a load of goods that has been purchased In this way, Krishna became absorbed in competition. In that unrestricted play, those who won were carried, and those who were defeated were the bearers. Looking like horses, they laughed and made others laugh. Without consideration of respect, they quarreled with each other. In this way, they moved from forest to grove and came to Bandira, banyan tree. When the playing became intense, Krishna, in order to have Pralamba carry Balaram on his shoulders, not caring if he was defeated or considering who was strong or weak, made his own group accept defeat. Thinking that it was difficult for others to carry by themselves, Krishna also carried someone. Krishna carried Sridham, and Pralamba carried Balaram. Others, thinking themselves strong, carried other boys. All said, "This is really good." At first, Pralamba showed attraction to Krishna. When he carried Balaram away, he became fearful of Krishna. Pralamba thus took Balaram far away from the play area. Absorbed in playing, Balaram did not manifest his power of knowledge and did not recognize the demon. Krishna understood the demon just by looking at him. Balaram remained undisturbed as before, and Krishna was skillful at tricking the demon. But Pralamba began to suffer as he carried Balaram, who was heavier than a mountain range. The proud demon, with an embarrassed mind, then manifested his previous huge body. When the black demon carried Balaram white as the moon, the Devatas thought that Rahu was carrying away the moon. Suddenly feeling a little fear, Balaram looked at Krishna's face. Understanding everything by the movement of Krishna's brow, Balaram then hit the demon's head with his fist. As a thunderbolt leaves a black mountain, streaked with red minerals, and returns to the hand of Indra, the soul of the demon gave up the dark body stained with blood and went to Vishnu, which is different than the Garga Samhita version. Because it's asked sometimes, what kind of liberation did these demons? So Garga Samhita has a different conclusion. Seeing simultaneously Pralamba fall far away and Balaram approaching closer, everyone smiled with astonishment. The two brothers, with tears in their eyes, embraced. Their friendship on embracing produced melting internally and externally. When Pralamba died with a thunderous roar, the Devatas, situated in heaven, showered him with flowers in joy and joked about him. Quote, this is the demigods joking. He gave the order to hit the demon on the head in order to play continuously. Oh, Pralamba, we do not transgress respect like you. Though some disturbance was caused by the death of Pralamba, the cowherd boys left the place where he was killed, polluted like a crematorium ground, and went to play under Bandira's huge expanse of branches extending 4 kroshas. Here it says, 1 krosha is 2 miles, 4 kroshas, 8 miles, or 1 yojana. It's a big tree. And that's Garga Samhita's description. Gopal Champu's description. Now just 2 things remaining. It's already 10 after 8. Next is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says about Pralamba representing lusty inclinations or a desire for personal gain and honor. Now, is it clear enough to read what's above those sitting places, those 3 sitting places? Can you read what it says? Yeah. So these are gates to hell, and they're represented by these different personalities. And Pralambasura has these same inclinations. He represents one who has those inclinations. And of course, on the right side, that's someone going up and someone going down. The staircase going up, the staircase going down. And at the top is the guru who is inviting the soul to go to Krishna. And down below is those enticing the soul to go away from Krishna and into the darker regions of material existence. Pralambasura represents a desire for personal gain and honor. On the right side is someone carrying somebody to sit on an elevated seat, and the left side, he then kicks the person who helped him get to that elevated seat. The materialistic intelligence that says material achievement by any means and exploiting people who help you get there. In Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writing, he says that Duryodhana is such a personality. Everyone derives their power from Krishna, but he was inimical to Krishna and the Pandavas. And so he met with his end in a harsh way, as did Pralambasura. Now, in Garga Samhita, there was a question that's presented here. Narada is relating who Pralambasura was in his previous life. To worship Lord Shiva, one day the Yaksha king Kuvera had the Yakshas place here and there in his beautiful forest many Raksha amulets made of flowers. When some of the flowers were stolen, the powerful Yaksha king Kuvera spoke a curse. He said, "Any demigod or human that takes any of these flowers will become a demon. That is my curse." Then the Gandharva Vijaya, who was the son of Huhu, walked on a pilgrimage to many holy places and singing Lord Vishnu's glories as he went. He came to the Chaitra Rata forest. Unaware of the curse, the Gandharva, Veena in hand, took some of the Sumana flowers there. At once he left his Gandharva body and became a demon. So he appeals to Kuvera. At once he took shelter of the great soul Kuvera. With folded hands he bowed down and presented his appeal. Pleased with him, Kuvera blessed him. "You are a peaceful-hearted devotee of the Lord Vishnu, O respectful one. Please don't lament. At the end of Dwapara Yuga, in the Bandiravan forest, by the Jamuna shore, you will attain liberation by Lord Balaram's hand. Of this there is no doubt." In this way, Huhu's Gandharva son became a great demon and, by Kuvera's grace, attained liberation. So depending upon which version, the liberation was he went to Lord Vishnu or he merged with the body of Balaram. Now, finally, there's a whole section of actually it's two of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's books, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur very interestingly explains that Krishna is, in his pastimes in Vrindavan, Krishna is assisting sadhakas, that's us, by seeing that there are obstacles on the path of bhakti. By killing these demons, he's thereby assisting sadhakas of overcoming obstacles on the path of bhakti. And each of the demons killed by Krishna in Vrindavan, specifically, there are specific obstacles on the path of bhakti. And he comments that 2 demons were killed by Balaram, which indicate something that one needs to pay special attention to and receive mercy from the original guru, Balaram. Because as we heard yesterday, Dhenukha represents bad intelligence. And the guru helps one overcome bad intelligence or very misguided intelligence. Misguided intelligence sees matter as all in all, and there's no sense of shelter in Krishna. So Guru, or Lord Balaram as the original Guru, helps by removing that difficulty. And here, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, these 3 features: lusty inclinations, desire for personal gain, and honor. These are very dangerous mentalities, even for people in the material world. What to speak of those who are on a spiritual path? So we need help from Balaram. We need spiritual strength to overcome those tendencies and proper intelligence to understand those are very detrimental tendencies one should very carefully ward or guard against, and the strength to do so comes from Balaram. That's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation of the significance of these 2 demons killed by Balaram, specifically for sadhakas, for us. Now, the pastime itself is very pleasant. The beginning section of the joy of the cowherd boys in being with Krishna, the forest of Vrindavan, and Krishna's engaging with the forest animals and the forest birds and everyone and everything. It's the scene is very sweet. And that's the spiritual world. Then, so aside, in the midst of that sweetness, here comes a demon. And Krishna deals with the demon in a way that the cowherd boys are just really happy with. And then, at the conclusion of the chapter, they go back to Vrindavan and tell the elders, wow, you know what Krishna did today? And they're singing it in songs, and the parents then start singing their songs, playing their musical instruments. That's life in Vrindavan. Every step is a dance and every word is a song. That's the place. Very unique place. Okay. 8:20. Any comments or discussion? Yeah. Do we have a portable microphone this evening? But there's some online people that will probably want to hear your question. I can hear you. You got a strong voice. Go ahead and speak, and I'll repeat your question while we're waiting for technology to work.
There's like this zero-sum game where people sort of will stab each other in the back, or like to become successful, you have to push other people down.
Yes, that goes on. Correct. Yes. Yes. It's the flip side of material consciousness, spiritual consciousness. That's it. He's done. He just made his comment. For those who are online, there was a comment that what this particular slide is in fact what goes on in the material world. People exploit other people, and then they push those very same people they exploited, they push them down. They help them get to some high place, and then they kick them. That's so that it's the flip side in spiritual life. Those that are less advanced, one tries to elevate. Those that are on a peer position, one makes friendship with. Those that are more advanced, one looks up to and tries to hear from and serve. That's the Madhyama Adhikari position. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much. So you, one of the things you mentioned is that yesterday we heard that Dhenukasur went back to Golok, and today Pralamba went to Vishnulok. So usually we understand that Putana had the desire that she saw Krishna as her baby. That's why she got the motherhood in Golok. But then did Dhenukasur also have something like this at the end of his life?
This is very esoteric, and there's not a lot of explanation about that esoteric point. So I don't want to venture into territory that's not illuminated by our acharyas, because it's beyond our mind and senses to know, other than what they disclose. So there's nothing written in scripture that I'm aware of. And that description that we heard yesterday from Garga Samhita, there's no counterpart anywhere else that I'm aware of. Including Gopal Champu and other places. It just doesn't say. So we only know what it said. Beyond that, we don't know.
So there was one more. Today you mentioned also that there are different groups of gopis which came with the Nitya Siddhas, and then they were in Vrindavan, Gokula Vrindavan. So there are different groups of gopis and different maybe variations in the moods.
Yes.
So do they also have different times and places? Do they also have a sampradaya which they come in?
Have a what?
The sampradaya?
Sampradaya?
No.
No, they're just no. No. Besides what we just read, it's the Pulinda gopis. Aside from that explanation, it's a common. You'll find it in our acharyas' writings regularly, or in multiple places, with the Rishi Chari gopis, meaning the sages in the Dandak forest. They desired to have Lord Ramachandra in that conjugal mood, and he denied that, saying they could take birth in his next incarnation as Krishna. And there's something similar that's presented in Garga Samhita. So but it has nothing to do with sampradaya. It just has to do with a particular affection for different backgrounds, and Krishna reciprocated with them. There's other examples.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with sampradaya. It just has to do with their affection.
So it would still mean it falls under the line of Braja Bhakti, all of the groups of the Rasa dance, like Chandravali or other gopis who are have their own situations in Vrindavan.
I'm not sure what your question is. Are you?
So like Gaudiya Vaishnavas, like from Srimati Radharani and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the Goswamis giving us the aspect of
that's our approach.
Line. Yes, Maharaj.
Us, that's our access.
Yes. So similarly, is that does it map to other gopis also? That like you answered that there isn't. I think.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
So like that's our approach when Chaitanya
That's our
Mahaprabhu's.
approach.
So
If you want to be part of Krishna's pastimes, you follow Rupa Goswami. Now, if your question, if those that are from other disciplines or other backgrounds, can they also join? That's your question? Krishna's pastimes?
yes, but not in the specific group of Srimati Radharani's.
I don't. That's very esoteric, and I don't have a clue.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. Yeah, I just have that question. Yeah,
I don't have a clue.
thank you, Maharaj. Yeah.
It's two things. It's not that, supposing that stage of bhakti arises for you. It's not that you'll be given a card that says, I'm a Gaudiya Vaishnav, and I'm going to join the rasa dance or the association with Krishna's gopis because I got my Gaudiya Vaishnav card. And someone else says, oh, well, I have. There's no such distinction. And second, the most important thing for you and for me is to become qualified. And the other kinds of explanation, while it may be a curiosity, like what's under that rock, what's behind that door, first become qualified. And you make that, your aspiration. Inquiry should be towards that which is going to help us reach the goal. And it is nice to get what's the big picture. But more important is having the qualification to achieve that situation in any case. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in this age of Kali, descended to give the most precious gift, the Braja Prem. And cherish it, nurture it.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. So the demon such as Pralambasura, externally he was disguised as Krishna's friend. He was disguised as Krishna's friend, but internally he was just the opposite. Similarly, externally we might pose as devotees and as somebody who's a friend of Krishna, but internally, you're able to hear me?
I got about 8% of what you said.
Oh, really?
Because of all the...
Is it audible now?
Slowly. Try again. Speak slowly.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hare Krishna, Maharaj. So the demon Pralambasura, externally he was disguised as Krishna's friend, but internally he was just the opposite.
Yes.
Similarly, externally we might pose as devotees, but internally our mind could be doing just the opposite.
Yes.
And in Bhagavad Gita also we learn how the mind could be the best friend or the worst enemy.
Yes.
So how is the mind that is supposed to be a best friend behave? I mean, is there a way the mind should behave in order to become a best friend? I'm just trying to put the pieces together with respect to austerity of mind and everything.
Well, you're mixing many things together.
Sure.
And it's I'm a little confused by the mixing, but I think I have an idea of the essence. The essence is how to not be a pretentious devotee. That's one part, because that's what Pralamba was doing. And how to have the mind instead become the best friend instead of the greatest enemy. So the greatest friend instead of the greatest enemy is, in simple terms, the mind that's controlled and the mind that's not controlled. And the mind that's controlled is absorbed in Krishna. And the mind that's not absorbed is all over the place. That's the uncontrolled mind. And that's what we're very familiar with, the uncontrolled mind. And the best friend is when the mind becomes absorbed in Krishna. And the way to get the mind absorbed in Krishna is through devotional service. In simple terms, there's details, but the simple terms is the bhakti process overall is meant to purify all of the working and knowledge acquiring senses through the medium of devotional service. As the senses become purified, it makes it easier for the mind to become fixed on Krishna. We're discussing this in the morning class from Uddhava Gita in short, because it's a long section. Krishna says to Uddhava, if the mind is not fixed on me, that's where your mind is the best friend. There's two things recommended by Krishna. One, offer the fruits of your work to me. This is, Krishna to Uddhava, but it's Krishna to us. So, Nishkam Karma Yoga. Prescribed duties, offering the fruits to Krishna. Nishkam Karma Yoga. Krishna is to be pleased by the results of your work. And hear about me. That Bhagavad Dharma. Hear about Krishna. So that's how to make the mind the best friend. When the mind is the best friend, it's with Krishna. And the mind isn't steady like that, then these two things are specifically recommended. And there's subsets of those things, but that's okay. It's a good starting point. Become qualified for the mind to be absorbed in Krishna. And then that's when the mind is the best friend. Here's another detail. It's a subset of this. But when the intelligence is directed towards Krishna, the mind will follow. When the intelligence is indifferent toward Krishna, then the mind is not controlled. The mind is the enemy. But behind that enemy of the mind is the enemy intelligence. That's this Dhenukasura. There's a whole section in it's a detail, but in the Festival of the Holy Name, I gave a whole seminar surrounding that topic of indifference of the intelligence. And it's really nicely described in Sankalpa Sangiti, the book by Shivram Maharaj. The stage of indifference comes before turning away from Krishna. The stage of indifference is like neutral. It's apathy. There's Sanskrit terms, but it's just like when we do devotional service, and we're not fixed on this is for Krishna's pleasure. That's the heart. Then the intelligence follows the heart. It directs the mind. But if there's at the heart level indifference, then the intelligence is also bahushakhahi anantasya, very splayed out, instead of vyavasayatmika buddhi. So intelligence directs the mind. So when the intelligence is strong, the mind will be upon Krishna. That's when the mind is the best friend. So our attitude, our regard for Krishna, that leads to the mind is the greatest enemy, is indifference. It's not necessarily anti, but indifferent. So like, when you put your hand in your bead bag tomorrow morning, how strong is the intention that this is my time with Krishna, and I'm really focused and energized, choosing to be with Krishna during this time? Or to what degree is there, it's a duty, I'm saying the mantra, and my mind is distracted. My point here is it starts at the heart level, then the intelligence, and then the mind, and then the mind is the best friend. So behind the greatest enemy kind of mind is an intelligence that's indifferent toward Krishna, or a heart that's indifferent towards Krishna. And it's easy to be complacent. And it's another word for indifference. When we're comfortable, we're complacent. And we're uncomfortable, we're more alert. And when we're in higher consciousness, we're not just, anyway, it's not liberationist kind of thing, it's a relationship with Krishna, a connection with Krishna, spirit. It makes the difference between the mind that's the best friend and the mind that's the greatest enemy. Just for example, when chanting, what to speak of everything else throughout the day. So now, boil it down to some little sutras. Sadhusanga. When you have quality sadhusanga, and we maintain that in a strong way, vibrant, meaningful sadhusanga, then our strength becomes greater. When sadhusanga becomes diminished, our strength becomes diminished, weakened. Strong sadhusanga, and then the intention gets, the purpose becomes awakened, etc., etc., etc. Then the mind can be, then more likely the mind will be your best friend. Anything else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki.